The divorce papers sat on the mahogany desk, waiting for her signature. Amara Nwosu stared at them, her hands trembling. This was the same desk where, 5 years ago, she had knelt on cold marble floors, tears streaming down her face, begging this man for any job to save her dying mother. The same man who had looked at her with ice in his eyes and ordered security to remove her from his building. The same man who became her husband. And the same man who now sat across from her, insisting their marriage had been a mistake from the start. But this story doesn't begin with divorce papers. It begins with a desperate girl from Ajegunle who had nothing, and a cold billionaire who had everything except mercy. What happened between them would shock everyone who thought they knew how these stories ended. 5 years earlier, Amara Nwosu was 22 years old and watching her world crumble. On a humid Lagos morning, she stood outside Okafor Enterprises on Victoria Island, clutching a folder of rejected job applications. The building towered above her, glass and steel reaching toward the sky, a monument to wealth she'd never known. Her mother lay dying at LUTH with stage 4 cancer. The treatments cost more than their family had ever possessed. They'd sold everything. Their small house in Surulere, their generator, her late father's Peugeot 504. The money had run out weeks ago, and her mother's condition worsened daily. Amara had applied everywhere. From Ikeja to Lekki, from Six to Ikoyi. Chicken Republic, cleaning companies, data entry firms. Every door had slammed shut. This building was her last hope. The lobby of Okafor Enterprises looked like something from a foreign film. Italian marble reflected crystal chandeliers. Men and women in expensive agbada and designer suits moved with purpose. Amara looked down at her worn slippers and the Ankara wrapper she'd sewn from Balagan market remnants. She already felt out of place. The receptionist, a woman with flowing Brazilian weave, looked her up and down with undisguised contempt. When Amara explained she wanted to apply for any available job, the receptionist cut her off sharply. They didn't accept walk-in applications. She should leave before security was called. Amara begged, calling her sister, explaining she was a first-class Unilag graduate who could do anything. The receptionist simply called for security. Desperation makes people do unthinkable things. As 2 large security guards approached, Amara saw the elevator doors beginning to close. Inside stood a man in an agbada so expensive it could probably pay her mother's entire medical bill. Without thinking, she ran. Her slippers slapped loudly against the marble as she sprinted across the lobby and thrust her hand between the closing doors. The elevator opened. She came face to face with Chibik Okafor. Everyone in Lagos knew who he was. The 32-year-old billionaire CEO, son of Chief Emmanuel Okafor, who had transformed his father's modest transport business into a multi-billion naira conglomerate. Ruthless in business. Cold as Harmattan wind in person. Devastatingly handsome with sharp cheekbones, intense dark eyes, and a perfectly groomed beard. He looked at Amara like she was an insect that had invaded his personal space. "Get out," he said. His voice was quiet but carried absolute authority born from generational wealth. Tears were already streaming down Amara's face. She begged him for any job. Her mother was dying at LUT. She'd do anything. "Security is coming for you," he replied coldly. "I suggest you leave before this becomes more embarrassing than it already is." Something inside Amara broke. Her Igbo pride should have stopped her, but desperation was stronger. She dropped to her knees right there in the elevator. "Sir, I'm begging you in the name of God. I'll work for free for the first month. I'll do anything. Please just give me a chance. Biko." For one brief moment, something flickered in those cold dark eyes. But it vanished almost instantly. "I don't hire beggars," he said, pressing a button on his phone. The elevator opened and security dragged Amara out while she sobbed in Igbo, calling on her late father's spirit. Chibik Okafor never looked back. They threw her onto the hot Lagos street like refuse. She sat on burning concrete outside the gate, her CV pages scattered in gutter water, and cried until she was empty. In that moment she hated him. Hated his cold eyes, his expensive clothes, his complete lack of humanity. She had no idea that fate was about to force them together in the most unexpected way. 3 days later, Amara's mother died. She was holding her hand in the crowded LUTH ward when her mother took her last breath. With her final words, she whispered in Igbo, "Enebium, you are stronger than you know. Promise me you'll fight. Don't let this wicked Lagos break you." Amara promised, though she had no idea how she'd keep that promise. She had 18,000 naira to her name, a funeral requiring at least 200,000, and no prospects. At 2 a.m., she sat in the hospital cafeteria drinking terrible Nescafe, staring at her mother's bill, 1.8 million naira she could never repay. That's when she heard raised voices nearby. A doctor was trying to convince someone to accept treatment. The patient was refusing loudly. Amara looked up and froze. Chibik Okafor stood 20 feet away, his white senator sleeve soaked in blood, a nasty gash above his eyebrow. He looked furious and in pain, nothing like the composed billionaire from 3 days ago. The doctor explained that Okafor had been in a serious accident on 3rd Mainland Bridge and could have internal injuries. Okafor insisted he didn't have time for this wahala. He swayed dangerously, catching himself on the wall. The doctor left in frustration. Amara should have walked away. Should have let karma work. Should have remembered his cruelty. But her mother had just made her promise to fight, and sometimes fighting means being the bigger person. She approached him and told him he needed medical attention. He recognized her immediately. The girl from the elevator. The beggar he'd thrown out like rubbish, she confirmed, before adding that head wounds were serious. He started to dismiss her advice but stumbled. Instinctively she caught his arm. He was heavy, solid muscle under the blood-stained fabric. They stood there for a moment, the billionaire who had destroyed her last hope and the girl with nothing left to lose. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, genuinely confused. "Because somebody should," she replied simply. She found a nurse and soon they had him in a private exam room. Amara started to leave but his hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "Stay," he said. It wasn't a command or request. It was almost vulnerable. So she stayed. Chibik Okafor's injuries were severe. 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and 16 stitches for the gash. His Mercedes G-Wagon was completely destroyed on 3rd Mainland Bridge, but somehow he'd walked away, stubborn even when bleeding. Amara sat through his treatment, not entirely sure why she remained. Perhaps because her mother's body still lay in the morgue downstairs and she wasn't ready to face that reality. When the doctors finished, Okafor looked at her with eyes that seemed slightly less cold. "You lost someone tonight," he stated. She nodded silently. "I'm sorry," he said, then added, "My own mother died of cancer 5 years ago. We had all the money in the world, but it still wasn't enough." Those simple words carried unexpected weight. Silence filled the room. Outside, Lagos was waking up, Okada bikes and street hawkers beginning their day. Then Okafor said something that would change both their lives forever. He needed a personal assistant, someone he could trust, someone unafraid to tell him when he was being foolish. Clearly he needed that, considering he'd tried to leave a hospital with a head injury. The job paid 7 million naira annually with full health insurance for her family. She'd start immediately. Amara stared at him in disbelief, asking why he'd offer this. He explained that she'd had every reason to walk past him that night, to let him suffer, to laugh at the man who'd humiliated her. But she didn't. That revealed character. And obviously she needed the money. When she asked if this was pity, he insisted it was a genuine job offer. He needed someone competent and honest, qualities she'd demonstrated clearly. And when they were alone she should call him Chibik, not sir. As Amara left the hospital that morning, sunrise painted the sky pink and orange over 3rd Mainland Bridge where his accident occurred. She'd lost her mother and gained a miracle in 12 hours. She had no idea how complicated things would become. Working for Chibik Okafor was like being thrown into a hurricane. He was demanding, brilliant, and worked 18-hour days. From sunrise prayers to midnight conference calls with London and Dubai, the man never stopped. Amara struggled initially but learned quickly. She had no choice. But something unexpected was happening. During those long hours together, she saw beyond the cold CEO mask. She discovered the man who donated millions anonymously to cancer treatment centers after she mentioned her mother. The man who worked relentlessly because he'd watched his father struggle and vowed his family would never suffer again. The man who fasted every Monday for his late mother and prayed faithfully at the family mosque in Ikoyi every Friday. And he began seeing her. Not the desperate elevator girl, but Amara. The woman who could match his business acumen, challenge his decisions when wrong, and make him laugh during late-night strategy sessions with stories about growing up in Ajegunle. 6 months into her employment, everything shifted. They were reviewing contracts for an Abuja property development past midnight. Amara joked about his terrible taste in jollof rice, preferring party jollof to proper home cooking. He laughed genuinely, and when she looked up, he was staring at her with an expression she'd never seen before. He told her he was in trouble. The kind where he couldn't stop thinking about his assistant, where he looked forward to seeing her each morning, where the thought of her leaving made him want to shut down the entire company just to keep her there. Amara's heart pounded. "Tell me I'm not alone in this," he said. "Tell me you feel it too." She did. God help her, she did. "You're not alone," she whispered. He kissed her then, softly at first, then deeper, like he'd been restraining himself for months. That night changed everything between them. They tried maintaining professionalism. They failed spectacularly. Within weeks, they'd stopped hiding their relationship. He took her to Lekki weddings where she wore aso-ebi costing more than her old rent. They flew to Dubai for a weekend just because she'd mentioned never leaving Nigeria. He looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. His father, Chief Emmanuel Okafor, disapproved strongly. "Chibik, this girl is from where? Ajegunle? What will our people say? What about Senator Adeyemi's daughter?" But Chibik remained firm. He loved her. She was the one. 8 months after the hospital encounter, he proposed. Not at a fancy resort or lavish party, but in the office at 3 a.m., both exhausted from merger work. "Marry me," he said suddenly. When she looked up in shock, he explained that he knew it was fast, that people would talk, that his family had concerns, but he'd never been more certain of anything. He produced a stunning diamond ring that caught the Lagos city lights. "You make me want to be better. You make me feel alive again. Marry me." She said yes. Their wedding 3 months later was quiet. No society spectacle, no Owambi with live bands. Just a simple registry ceremony, small church Thanksgiving, and traditional wine carrying with close family. Her relatives from Ajegunle mixed with his influential Ikoyi friends under one canopy. Amara thought she was living a fairy tale. She was devastatingly wrong. The first year was blissful. They lived in a beautiful Banana Island house. She continued as his right hand. They were partners in everything. But during year 2, changes began. Chibik grew distant, obsessed with business expansion. The man who once canceled meetings for lunch with her started missing dinners entirely. He'd return after midnight, claiming club meetings with associates or contract work in Abuja. Amara told herself it was temporary. A busy quarter. Lagos hustle. Then she found the text messages. She wasn't snooping. His phone buzzed while he showered and she glanced at it. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear that red dress I bought you. V." Her blood ran cold. When Chibik emerged, she confronted him about V. His face went blank as he claimed it was a business associate. She pointed out that business associates don't dictate wardrobe choices. He insisted she was misunderstanding and left for a meeting with the Alhaji without explaining. After that, she noticed everything. Late meetings. Lipstick on his Agbada collar he claimed came from a client's cheek greeting. Bank alerts for expensive Radisson Blue and Eco hotel purchases on nights he claimed to work late. She confronted him repeatedly. Each time he denied everything, called her paranoid, said Lagos women were too suspicious. She began doubting her own sanity. Until the day she saw them together. She'd returned home for a forgotten laptop. Chibik's car sat in their Banana Island driveway when he'd claimed to be in Abuja. Through the window, she saw him with a stunning light-skinned woman, kissing passionately in their own living room. He saw her. Their eyes met. He didn't even look sorry. That night, Chibik came home late. Amara sat in the dark living room waiting. She demanded they talk. He was tired but she persisted, asking who the woman was. He poured cognac and told her it was Victoria Mensah, someone from his past. When pressed about duration, he casually admitted 6 months. They'd reconnected at a Ghana business conference and things evolved from there. Amara felt numb. 6 months of betrayal. He tried claiming it wasn't what she thought, but she demanded explanation. He set down his glass and looked at her with those elevator eyes, ice cold, warmth completely gone. "The truth? I made a mistake marrying you, Amara," he said. The words struck like physical blows. He continued, explaining she'd been convenient, sweet, different from society girls, but she never belonged in his world. Victoria came from his class. Her father was a former minister. She understood the pressure, expectations, lifestyle. She attended the same foreign schools he had. With Victoria he didn't have to pretend. Amara asked if their entire marriage was pretense. He said he cared about her, but love? He didn't think he'd ever truly loved her. His father had been right. He should have married within his circle. He was sorry. Something inside Amara both shattered and hardened. She told him to leave. When he pointed out it was his house, she screamed in Igbo, hurling his expensive glass at the wall. "Puo, go to her. See if I care." He left without argument. Amara sat among broken glass, crying until sunrise over Banana Island. Which brings the story back to the present, to the divorce papers, to 3 years later. But Chibik didn't know what had happened during those 3 years. While he assumed Amara had simply moved on, she'd actually transformed into something far more powerful. She'd taken everything learned working for him and started Nwosu and Associates, a consulting firm. She helped small Nigerian businesses become competitors. She built connections across West Africa and learned every industry secret, including all of Chibik Okafor's. She discovered Victoria wasn't just an affair, she was a corporate spy for Dangote's competitors. For 3 years, Victoria had been feeding rival companies Chibik's strategies, client lists, and acquisition targets. His recent failures? The collapsed Abuja project? The lost government contract? All Victoria's doing. And here's the irony. The rival company employing Victoria, Quantum Industries, had hired Amara too. They wanted her to help destroy Chibik Okafor. But despite everything he'd done, the cheating, the cruelty, making her feel like an Ajegunle nobody, Amara learned that Victoria and her employers weren't planning mere financial ruin. They intended legal destruction, framing him for fraud and money laundering to EFCC. They wanted him in Kirikiri prison. So Amara made a choice. She would save him, not for him, but because her mother taught her to be better than those who hurt her. Amara stood from her chair looking at Chibik carefully. He appeared tired, older. Those once cold dark eyes now just looked empty. "I'm not signing the papers," she stated quietly. He blinked in confusion. She repeated that she wouldn't sign, not today. He started saying their marriage had been over for years, but she interrupted with a question. "How much do you know about Victoria's business dealings?" His expression changed as he asked what she meant. Amara explained that Victoria had been working with Quantum Industries for 3 years, feeding them all his strategies, client lists, land plans, and bids. He insisted this was impossible. Victoria would never betray him. Amara pulled out her tablet, showing emails, bank transfers to Ghanaian accounts, recorded conversations. Victoria had played him from the beginning. That Ghana conference? Stage. Every moment of their relationship? Orchestrated to destroy him and steal his company. Chibik sank into his chair, studying the evidence. Amara watched him process it. The betrayal, the manipulation, the realization that the woman he'd left his wife for had never loved him. She'd seen him as nothing but a target. "Why are you showing me this?" His voice broke. Amara explained that despite everything, the affair, the cruelty, being made to feel unworthy of his world, she couldn't let him be destroyed like this. Not for fraud he didn't commit. Not to EFCC for crimes committed in his name. He pointed out she could have let him burn after how he disgraced her. She agreed. 3 months ago she would have celebrated his downfall. But her mother had taught her not to let bitterness consume her, to be better than those who caused pain. So she outlined the plan, exposing Victoria and Quantum Industries, saving his company, feeding false information until they caught everyone. They'd work as partners, not as husband and wife, but as two people who once mattered to each other. "And after?" he asked quietly. After, she told him, he'd sign the divorce papers and they'd both move forward. Him with what remained of his empire, her with hers. When he asked what if he admitted being wrong, that losing her was his biggest mistake, that every day without her was hell, she paused at the door. "Then I'd say you should have thought of that before you broke my heart, Chibik. Some things once broken can't be fixed. They can only be survived." The following 6 weeks were intense. Amara and Chibik worked together like old times but differently, professional, careful, walking on broken glass of their shared past. They gathered evidence, set traps, and waited for Victoria and Quantum Industries to make their final, exposing move. The night arrived at an eco-hotel charity gala. Lagos Society's cream attended, Banana Island to Ikoyi, everyone who mattered. Victoria was there, stunning in red, playing the perfect girlfriend, greeting guests like she was already Mrs. Okafor. She had no idea what was coming. Chibik took the stage. Instead of typical speeches about youth empowerment and Nigerian excellence, he began revealing everything: conspiracy, fraud, industrial espionage. He displayed proof on massive screens throughout the ballroom. Bank statements, recorded calls, email screenshots to Quantum Industries executives. Women's voices screamed "Jesus" and "Chinik" across the room. Amara watched Victoria's face collapse. Confident smile melted to panic. She tried running but EFCC officers waited at every exit. As they led her away in handcuffs, Victoria looked at Amara with fury. "You bush girl from Ajegunle. You did this," she hissed. Amara replied calmly in Igbo so only Victoria understood. "No. You did this to yourself. I just made sure everyone knew." Quantum Industries executives were arrested too. The scandal dominated Nigerian headlines. Punch, Vanguard, Linda AKG everywhere. Chibik's company was vindicated. He became a hero for exposing corporate fraud. Later, he found Amara on the hotel balcony overlooking Lagos Lagoon. "You saved me," he said quietly. "I saved the truth," she corrected. "There's a difference." Chibik admitted he had no right to ask, no right to hope, but was there any chance they could start over? Could she possibly forgive him? Amara looked at this man she'd once loved desperately, who had broken her, who had just learned what real betrayal felt like. She told him the worst part wasn't even the cheating or lying. It was that he'd made her ashamed of her origins. He'd made being from Ajegunle feel like a deficiency. Made her Unilag degree seem worthless because she hadn't studied abroad. Made her Igbo feel inadequate because she didn't speak English with a foreign accent. He insisted she was always enough, too good for him, that he couldn't handle it. She stopped him. "No. You don't get to rewrite history now. You meant every word that night, Chibik. Every single word. Maybe Victoria used you, maybe she broke your heart. But you broke mine first. While looking in my eyes and telling me I never belonged in your world." Tears streamed down his face. "I was wrong. So wrong. I was a fool." She acknowledged his mistakes, adding that maybe in another life that would suffice. She pulled the divorce papers from her bag, already signed, her signature neat and final. "I forgive you, Chibik. Not for you but for me. For my peace of mind. Holding on to this anger was destroying me. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I'm choosing to move forward." She handed him the papers and walked away. He didn't follow. 2 years later, Nwosu and Associates had become one of West Africa's top consulting firms with offices in Lagos, Abuja, and Accra. Amara helped companies build ethical, transparent businesses. She graced covers of Genevieve magazine and This Day Style. She dated occasionally, a banker from Access, a lawyer from a wedding, nothing serious yet, but she remained open. She heard Chibik sold part of Okafor Enterprises and started a foundation in her mother's name, the Nwosu Memorial Cancer Center, providing free treatment for poor families across Lagos. He never remarried. Articles about him showed a man looking slightly sad, somewhat lost. They encountered each other sometimes at industry events and weddings. Cordial. Professional. Exchanging polite Lagos society pleasantries. Sometimes she caught him looking at her with longing. She felt nothing, not anger, not love. Just quiet acknowledgement of what was and what would never be again. Because Amara finally understood the truth that took years to learn. Not every love story gets a happy ending. Not every broken thing can be fixed. Sometimes the bravest act is walking away from someone who broke you, even after they realize what they lost. Sometimes redemption isn't about recovering what you had. It's about discovering who you are without it. And Amara discovered she was stronger than she ever knew. Just as her mother always said she would be. She was Amara Nwosu. From Ajegunle to Banana Island. From beggar to boss. From broken to whole. And she'd done it entirely on her own terms.